From a small spark kindled in America, a flame has arisen.
What do you hope this unvarnished look at our nation's founding brings to the American people? Because, like you said, you spent a decade diving into the research, and it's not just kind of, the elementary school line of
Mhm.
this, small rabble fighting against the British Empire. It's so much
Right.
more than that.
But it is that too,
Yes, yes, it
and
is
so
that too.
it's I don't think that there's a part of us that's trying to, dispel myths. We're not myth busters out there to make you poke holes in your understanding of the American Revolution. In fact, what we're doing is taking what you already know, really rebooting it. So just, don't forget entirely what you knew going in the door, but what you knew going in the door is going to be supplemented by all sorts of other information that's going to make what you already know make much more sense. I think all of us, before we even have conscious memories, have some concept of the American Revolution. George Washington's on our currency, the flag, it's all there for us, right? 4th of July. Um, but and then we learn about it in elementary school. We learn about it again, maybe in middle school and high school, and then we don't really learn about it. So the only way that we've really discussed it is in those elementary school ways, or maybe in middle school or high school, we get a little bit more time with it, but your teacher's worried that, this is a survey course on American history. They're worried they're not going to get to the 20th century,
Yeah.
much less the 21st century, if they spend the time that it deserves to spend on the American Revolution. I think also, a lot of us are hungry for, curious for history and knowledge, and miss being able to dive into this sort of history. So, for adult learners like you and me, here's an opportunity. And yeah, there's just a lot more out there than the stuff that we learned when we were kids, but the stuff that we learned when we were kids is still very much part of this story. I think that people are going to come away with this with different interpretations. I am grateful for that. I welcome that for sure. Our intention is not to make you think a certain way. It's definitely not to make you feel a certain way, but maybe we can give you something to think and to talk and to feel about, and to communicate with other people and find out how they did the same.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm glad that you had a good experience with it.
And we kind of touched on this a little bit too, but the war is, a war for independence, but it's also a civil war and a world war. How does the series address its magnitude?
So, one of the things that I feel like I should have known this, but was surprising to me when making this film is the American Revolution, while it absolutely did win American independence, of course, and unite the states and create the republic that, we still live under. None of those were on the table at the start. Those weren't war objectives on April 19th, 1775. They became necessary to win the war. They're kind of outcomes of the war rather than goals. What they were really trying to do at the start was to liberate Boston and to get a redress of grievances and to bring things back to the way they were under the British Empire when things worked out the way that they did. But in order to win the war, they had to involve all sorts of American people who otherwise might not get along. And coalition building made it a war about liberty,
Mm.
um, made it this fight for union. And it just gets bigger and bigger. And then, in order to win the war, they had to involve foreign powers. The French came in, the Spanish came in as the allies of the French, the Dutch declared war on the British. And the war ends up being fought not just, it begins on Lexington Green. It spreads all throughout not just the original 13 colonies, but over the mountains to the Ohio River country, along the Gulf Coast, even out to the Mississippi River. It's also in the Caribbean. It's fought off of England, with John Paul Jones at Flamborough Head. It's fought in the Atlantic Ocean. It's fought along the coast of France, fought along the coast of Africa. It's even fought in the Indian subcontinent. And that's just the war. The ideas just grow and grow and inspire revolutions and have inspired revolutions for the past 250 years, all throughout the world. Ho Chi Minh, when he declared Vietnamese independence, had two United States OSS officers standing next to him and was quoting in Vietnamese Thomas Jefferson.
And then kind of turning more towards the war itself, the revolution is almost kind of the definition of when Ulysses S. Grant, one of my favorite scenes is we'll look them tomorrow. And
Hmm.
we lose a majority of the battles against the
Yeah.
British, yet we emerge victorious. Kind of, this is a broad question, but how?
Yeah. I mean, well, okay. So my previous experience studying war was with the Vietnam War. So I could be colored by that interpretation where it's just, this is an insurgency. An insurgency just has to outlast the counterinsurgency, outlast the counterinsurgency. But I don't think George Washington realized that at first. And so it's something that he learned through the war. Um, Initially, when his Continental Army forces were ringing Boston, he proposed going across the ice of the Charles River and invading Boston, occupied Boston. That very likely would have been bad. His and he took good counsel, and they told him, don't do that, and he agreed with them, didn't do it. But then the next year, after they had taken Boston, he put armies on Long Island and Manhattan in a time when Britain rules the waves. This is rule Britannia. The British Royal Navy is the best military force in the world probably at that time, just completely supreme on the high seas. And New York is surrounded by water. Horrible mistakes were made in the Battle of Long Island in the lead up and after. Um, so the how there, I mean, I think that if you take the Vietnam interpretation, it's hard to imagine Britain ever beating a united insurgency in the face of this. But it wasn't that united in 1776. There's still very strong loyalist presence and also lukewarm patriots. And Washington, if he had been captured at the Battle of Long Island, it could have been a completely different story.